Right, now the main pieces of equipment that are needed are a cell board, which is this board here, comes with a non-slip mat, has a groove side and it has a flat side, a rolling pin, 9-inch rolling pin, ball tool or a dog bone tool. There are a few different ones on the market. These are two different makes of dog bone tools. I've found a lot of students work better with the ball tool. It's a bit easier, so this is what I would recommend. If you go to see my friend Tracy at Cakes to Please in Shipley, she sells these, so you'll be able to get them from there, and any other things that you need that you can't get from me. Other tools that we'll be using on the filler flowers, I'm going to use this tool. This is called a veining tool, a silk veining tool. We use this to put veins into flowers where we don't have the rubber veins or anything like that. If you don't want to spend the money, they're only £2 odd for these, so they're not an expensive item. You will need a pair of long nose pliers, or a pair of decent scissors to cut your wires. I use florist scissors, but don't use ordinary scissors, but for today I'm going to use these, but I also use them for bending wires as well. Then the cutters that we're going to use to make the roses are these two cutters here. Those are rose petal cutters. I prefer the metal ones because they're a lot sharper and they don't go blunt like some of the plastic ones. And also as well, I've got some metal rose leaf cutters here. You can buy plastic ones. These are more expensive, but again the metal ones are sharper. And then also dusting brushes for dusting your colour onto your flowers and leaves. And glue. I sell this in a little bottle. It comes with a brush in it. It's £2 for the brush and bottle, and then 50p for a refill when you've used your glue up in it. Right, I'm going to get on now. So I'm going to use flower paste to do our flowers with, which is a paste that's got gums in it that enables it to be very stretchy, so you can roll it very thin. And the roses that I'm doing are, if I just get a sample down to show you, I'm doing cream roses, and these I've dusted with a pinky coloured edge. So if we put that up close up so you can see that, okay. Right, so this is the flower paste. I've already coloured it in some ivory, Wilton do an ivory, and so do Sugar Flare colours. Other than that, I would use a very light brown, probably a teddy bear brown or something from Squire's Kitchen, but Sugar Flare is cheaper, and I find the colours are just as good. So I'm going to start off by rolling out a small amount, I'm going to roll out a small amount, and I'm going to show you how to make the centre of the rose. Now this you need to dry, ready for using, so I'm using a small ball of paste. Now if you have difficulty measuring things, there is another tool that you can get, which is this tool here, which is called a size guide. And for this I'm going to use a size 6 ball of paste, which your ball of paste should just fit in. It's just slightly dropped through there, but that would be about the right size. You've got to remember that that is going to fit into the smaller one of the two cutters, so it doesn't want to be bigger than that. Smaller than that is better than bigger. There's a friend of mine that did cakes for me years ago. She said my roses look like cabbages, and that is the reason why is because she made the centres too big. Right, so I've already cut some wires somewhere. Where I've put them, here we are. This is a 20 gauge wire. We start off with a full size wire. This is a 20 gauge, which is a very large wire. So what we do is we cut that into 3. So you get 3 roses out of 1 wire. Sorry, just knocked my camera. And what you do then, first of all, is you put a hook on the end of the wire, like that. It's what we call a shepherd's crook. Then pop that into the ball of paste, like that. And then between 2 fingers at the top where you've put the wire in, roll it between your fingers like that. When you've done that, you can go on to just 1 hand and just roll it so you've got a bit of a point on the top, like that. So you've got your cone there, okay? So that needs to be put on one side to dry. I've already got one here that I've already dried, so that's hard, okay? So if I go back to my paste, now remember, when you're making roses, unless you're doing a dark coloured rose like a red or a burgundy or something like that, we always start off with a slightly deeper colour than the flower that you want to finish with, and then you add white to each layer that you've got, which mimics the illusion of the light shining through the petals as the flower opens. So first of all, you need a tiny bit of white fat on your board. We use Trex, which is a vegetable fat, because we need the paste to stick to the board, and we also need to be able to roll it out very thin. And if we try to do that without putting the Trex on there, because once it goes on the board, it stays on the board, you don't move it around, it's not pastry, and roll it out nice and thin. According to Maureen, who taught me when I first started, you should be able to read a newspaper through your paste, which is how thin you should get it. Now, you can't do this with sugar paste that you cover your cakes with, or fondant as you'll find it's called in supermarkets, which is actually wrong. It should be sugar paste, but there we are. So you need it really thin, and if I don't know whether you can see or not from there, but I can just see the mottled background of the board coming through there. So I'm going to start off by cutting out 2 petals. Take that paste away. Make sure that you keep it covered at all times, because if you don't, it will dry out. Then I have a little palette knife. You can get these from an art place. I usually go to the range because they're pretty good on price with things like this. You can buy sets for about £2 or £3 from there. I haven't seen them recently, so I don't know how much they are now, but I think they were about £2.99 when I bought my set, which is about 2 or 3 years ago. Right, the next job we're going to do is to thin the edges. So you get it onto the onto this pad here, which is called petal pad. This one is a PME one, which is very easy to wash. You can put it in your washer with your whites, and when it gets dirty, and wash it, and it'll be fine. Some of the pads that are on the market you can't wash. Start from the edge with your ball tool on the edge, half on and half off, and pull it round the side like that, and thin the edges. Don't be frightened of putting some pressure on it. Round from the top to the bottom, top to bottom. And then I turn it over. The reason I turn it over is because the way that I've frilled the petals there, they're going to go the way that I want them to go. So the next job now is to first petal, glue all over. That one is going to totally cover the centre that I made previously. So down onto your petal like that, and then pull the top part round and bring it right round as far as you can get it, tuck it in like that, and then take the other side all the way around the other way. When you look down the centre there, you shouldn't be able to see that centre in there. That should be totally covered. Okay, then what you do then is turn it over where your edge of your petal is there. You're going to put that face down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue 2/3 of the petal, or 3/4, it doesn't matter. Don't go too far up, you don't want to go right up to the top. From here on in, you don't want any glue on the top part there, otherwise when you come to dusting your flowers, they just won't take. So just bring it round to meet, like that, and like that. Okay? So we just put that to one side and let that dry. Right, get rid of that. Go back to the paste. Now then, this is where your paste is going to grow, so you need to be careful here. So if you're only making a few, don't colour too much paste. I'm going to end up with a lot of paste left here. So what we do now at this stage is, between each layer of petals, we're going to add the same amount of white to that paste. You need to keep kneading it in until you've got it all the way through. You don't want any streaky paste. Unless you were doing a rose that's streaky, of course, then that's a different matter. But we're not. We're doing a plain coloured rose. I wouldn't recommend trying anything complicated like that. You'd probably get yourself a bit frustrated and you'd end up with loads of odd pieces of paste. But we don't waste any of that. Right. So once we've done that, onto the board again. I'm just going to run my fingers over because there is still some white fat on there. We don't want too much on, otherwise you'll find it'll stick to your pad when you come to thin your edges. Roll your paste out again. Now usually when we do a spray of roses in class, I don't have people doing too many. You can do as many as you want if you feel you want to, but all I ask is that you do one of each stage. So you'll want one at the bud stage, so one of your roses you will leave at that stage with just the 2 petals on, and then do one to the half rose stage. Now that can be left at 2 different stages, which I'll explain as we go along. One can be left at the next stage that I'll just make sure I get my right one that I've already dried earlier. I've done my Blue Peter bit. Right, get your cutter again. We're using the same size cutter. This time I'm going to cut out 3 petals. Excuse my cough. I've had a chest infection ever since before lockdown started, and unfortunately I'm one of the many that have got the dreaded NHS letter to tell us to shield, so I'm not allowed out, so I just have to stay at home and do things like this. Right, so again, like before, thin the edges top to bottom like that. Don't try and go around your petals like that. I find a lot of students, when they do that, they tend to drift in and you end up with a ridge around the edge of your petal and the edge is thick. So do it that way from top to bottom. Don't worry about it going out of shape like that. We can soon reshape that again. That's it. Top down, top down. Turn them over again. The thing is, when you turn them over, and the reason why I do this is because that's the side that's got the greasy bit on it, so that's going to be on the inside, and that way you won't have any problem when you come to dusting. So glue, I'm only going to glue half the petal this time. I'm not going to glue any more than half the petal on any of the next few layers that we do. I think that needs a bit more glue. The thing is, it's better to put less glue on than it is too much glue, because you can always add a bit of glue afterwards if you feel that it's not sticking properly, but you can't take it off if you've got too much on. Right, so next layer, you want to be very, very slightly higher than the last layer. So you want probably about a couple of centimetres higher than the next layer. And the reason for that is when you do your flower, if you put them all at the same level, by the time you finish you end up with the centre higher than the outer petals, and what we want is a flat flower. Because we're going higher, you'll find that when we've curled the petals back, which you will see in a bit, the petals will be level. So your next petal goes halfway across that, like that. We're aiming to get sort of like an Isle of Man type thing. So if I do it this way and just tuck that round, leave that first one open, the next one goes in halfway across that, just pull that petal back, tuck that one in like that, and then you can then go around and adjust your petals in to make sure it's all neat at the bottom. Just going to slide those down a bit. I've slid up. The advantage with the glue on, you can, if they're in the wrong position, you can slide them down into the right position. So once you've done that, then with your finger and your thumb, just curve your petals back like this. Okay. I'll just turn that up a little bit because you can't see everything that I do. Right, so I'm just going to put that one to one side to dry. Back to the paste. I've gone for a smaller, hang on a minute, no I haven't, that one, that's the one. I've got loads of different colours in here, that's why I'm faffing about with it a bit there. So I'm only going to take half of this now because I don't need all that, because it's going to grow again because I'm going to add more white to it. And since I'm only doing a couple of flowers here, we don't need any more than that. Just give a wipe over with the board. If you feel you need a little bit more white fat on, just put a little tiny bit on. You don't need a lot. Roll that out. And cut out another 3 petals. 3. Take away your excess. And then these petals go onto your pad again. And thin the edges. Again in the same way from the top down. See, it's stuck a little bit there because I'd put a bit more white fat on my board, so they're a little bit stickier on the back than the last lot. Turn them over. Halfway down with the glue, from the middle down. Not going to touch that top bit at all. Keep the top on your bottle as well. We all have a habit of knocking these bottles over and spilling the glue, so people go through a lot more glue than they need to. Right, so back to the rose, and this time I'm going to turn the rose upside down to put these petals on, for the simple reason that, number one, I want the point of each of these petals to go in between the previous layer, and the other reason is these are going to be a bit more open, so they tend to be a bit looser and they can fall back and not go where you want them to do. So bring it down sort of lower than the 2 points on the petals on either side of it. So if you look at it, then you should have that little bit extra above, and that puts that petal over the join of the previous layer. Have a look at your rose to see which way it goes round, so it overlaps on that side So I'm going to go that way around now, because you're going the opposite way around to the first layer that you put on, and that depends on whether you're right-handed or left-handed. There isn't a right or wrong way of doing this. It's whichever is easier for you. I'm not going to stick the petals down yet because I just want to place them. They may overlap, they may not. It just depends, because you're going to be more open with this layer. And then you can go around, then that goes under, so that overlaps there, that goes down there, that only meets that one, that one's going under, and that's going over. So they have overlapped on a couple of the petals, but it doesn't matter if they don't. Turn it up the other way, and then you want more of a curve back on your petals this time, so it's more open, like that. So what I need to do now is, I've got a piece of dry foam here, florist foam, and we use this to stick the flowers in so that we can keep them in shape. So what I'm going to do to make sure they don't drop back like that one's doing there, I'm going to turn them upside down, just go around and give your petals a little bit of a tweak, like that, bend the wire over, and then that can go into the foam. Now I've already got some roses here that are already dry that I did this morning, that are ready for the next layer. Now this one is good. This is a half rose. Now if you're doing a half rose, you can either stop at the layer before with just 2 petals and then 3, or you can do 3 and 3 depending on how you want them. You can mix them up if you want, as I've done with some of the roses that I'm going to put in the spray that I'm going to show you. So I've got different colours, got a bit of dried foam on there off my foam. So I'm just going to pop that to one side now because that's dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to make that into a full rose. So back to the paste. Add the same amount of paste again and mix those together. So this is going to make the outer petals. And if you look at roses either in a shop or in your garden if you have them, you can see what I mean about the centre of the rose looking deeper, because the petals in the centre are more tightly woven, so they don't let the light through, so they appear darker. They're not really, but we're creating an illusion the way we do these roses. It's one of the only roses that we do like this, really. You know, I mean, even when we do things like peonies and that have a lot of petals, we don't do that as much, because generally we do when they're fairly open, so that the light is shining through all the petals anyway, so you get the illusion of the paler colour. But if you watch them when they're opening, you will see that before they open they are a lot darker. Right, so roll your paste out again, as thin as you can. As you notice, I'm not picking up and moving round at all. It's not a piece of pastry. Once you get it on the board, it stays on the board until you've got it as thin as you want to. As long as you've got some white fat on there, it's not going to find that it's easy to roll out. You're not going to get creases in it or anything like that. I'm not saying that we don't every now and again, but that's just purely by chance. Now this time I'm going on to the larger cutter now. This is the larger one to that. So this is for the outer row of petals. So I'm going to cut out 5 petals. That back into my bag. Don't need that now. Get your petals onto your pad. Round the edge. Now if we're doing life-size roses, because these cutters come in lots of different sizes up to a full life-size flower. With life-size ones we do tend to vein them and things like that because it's more obvious on the larger roses. This size of rose we don't put any veining on because nobody's going to see it anyway. And when people look at what you've done with a spray of flowers on a cake, it's the overall effect that people are looking at. Unless they're a florist or somebody that does sugarcraft, they probably won't look close enough to pick up on any details. And as I tell all my students, if anybody criticises anything that you've done, just say, well, you do it. That's the answer to that. Right, again, I'm going to glue half the petal. They're going to get caught out if you tell them to do it themselves, because if they don't know how to do it, they wouldn't know where to start, would they? This is the whole point, and this is why particularly wedding cakes are so expensive, because of the amount of work and time that goes into doing all these things. The flowers actually, to do a full spray, take longer than doing the cake, depending on what sort of design you're doing on it, which you will see in a bit, because I'm going to put this spray of flowers on a wedding cake that I've been working on. So that will give you an idea of what they look like and how to position them as well. Right, now then, back to the dried one. Again, I'm going to turn it upside down, and again you want your petals to be very slightly higher than the previous layer, and all I'm going to do now is, it doesn't matter where you start, I'm just going to place the petals side by side. Now then, which way are we overlapping? We're overlapping on that side, so I can press that down. The only one that you need to leave open is the first one that you put on, because the last one is going to go underneath that one. All I'm doing at the moment is just placing them at the top, same as I did with the previous layer. Then your last one goes under the first petal and over the petal before it, and then bring that one down and over it. Then you can go around, and you can very gently go around and stick your petals down like that. So then you've got your to that layer. Got a couple of hairs on there from somewhere. It's my cat. Right, so then you can curve these petals back. Now if you're doing a life-size one, I would do another layer after this, and they would be separately wired, because you're doing a larger one you can get more carried away, more petals on it. But it depends what it's for. If you're doing a cake and you just wanted to put one flower on it, then that would be ideal. You'd only have one flower to do. So again, I'm going to put it upside down, so I'm just going to go around and tweak those petals. While it's drying, what you need to do is to keep coming back and having a look and see if the petals have dropped down. If they've dropped down, you can reposition them while it's still movable. Okay, so there we are. That's where we've got to with that. So again, bend the wire down and onto the pad. I'm just going to move that a bit further forward. You can see more of what I'm doing there. Right, now we've done those, so I'm going to show you another flower before I get on to finishing those, because they're going to have a calyx put on the back, and also I'm going to show you how to make the leaves. But before that, I'm going to show you how to make a filler flower. Now filler flowers, we use a thinner wire for that, and I would recommend using a 26 gauge wire for this. Where are we? 26. There. Now because I'm going to put some stamens in the centre, I'm going to use a green wire, but you're going to cover the wire anyway, so it doesn't really matter. You can use either green or white wire with this. But this time I'm going to cut the wires into 4. We never waste anything, because there's no point in having more wire than you need. So to cut that into 4, like that. keep hold of the wires both sides and they don't fly away, because sometimes when you cut them you can end up having to hunt for the wires. And whatever you do, don't bend your wires. I keep catching students bending the wires. If you do that, particularly when you're doing something where you've got to put it in unless I tell you to, you want the wires straight, especially when you're doing leaves and petals and things like that. Right, the next stage is I'm going to put some stamens on, and I've got some ready-made stamens here, and I'm going to take, I think I've spilled something on these, they're a bit stuck together. I've got some more out there. Yeah. I'm going to take 2 of these stamens. Now for some of the flowers that I do, people that know me know that I have a tendency to make the wires if I can. I just have to undo this a bit to get my wires out, to loosen them up. I obviously spilt some glue or something on there for them to stick together like that. There we are. Two wires. Make sure you keep them all together in a bunch, because if you let go they'll go all over the place. So the wire that comes round them like this, just wind it round and make sure that they stay in a bunch like that. So we've got 2 wires here, 2 stamens rather, and they're all double-ended are all these stamens. So you've got a white cotton with a little blob on the end. I don't know if you can see that or not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fold those 2 in half. You wouldn't normally find 4 stamens in a flower, but we're not doing a particular type of flower. We're not aiming to be botanically correct here, so I'm only going to use a little bit. Now I've got some florist tape here. This is called Stemtex, which is a bit like crepe paper with glue in it. And when I've cut this into half, I have my little handy gadget here, which is an optional gadget with razor blades in that I use for cutting it, rather than going all the way down a piece of wire with a pair of scissors. So what you do first of all is stretch the end of the tape, and that'll release the glue. So if you just put it on your fingers like that and find out which is the sticky side. Now then, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can either start the tape off on your wire, or you can start it off on your stamens. Don't put your stamens on and your wire together and try to start it off, because you'll have difficulty starting it. So we get it in. Now you nip it in with your nail just to make sure that that's stuck down, and then just roll it between your finger and your thumb like that. Get your wire, pop that in so the top of the wire is just below the edge of that tape, so it's not going to show. Not that it makes a lot of difference, because that's going to go down inside the flower anyway. And then tape all the way down your wire. I'm using a light green tape here, which is called Nile Green. It does come in various different colours. The most common colours that we use are moss, Nile Green and brown, depending on what you're making. There is a white tape which we use sometimes if you're going to colour it, like a poinsettia where you've got the red stems and things like that. So you've got your stamens there. I'm just going to pop that in my foam for the time being. I'm just going to get some kitchen roll. It's another bit of kit that you need, that we use a lot. Wipe my board off, and I'm going to go back to the paste now, because I'm doing basically cream roses with pink edges. I've got some very pale cream paste here, which is possibly the colour that you've used for the outer part of your roses. If you're doing this colour combination, would be a good idea. Or you could just do plain white ones to put in with whatever colour you're doing, your choice. Right, so we start off with a small ball of paste, and apparently if you roll your paste anti-clockwise on your palm, you don't get any cracks in it. Now we're going to make a cone the same as we did for the roses, only this time we're going to have it the other way up, with the point down and the other side up. Now I have a little tool here that you can use to mark your centres out. If you haven't got it, then something like a cell stick, which is a tiny little rolling pin, or even a cocktail stick or anything like that will do. But this one has two ends. It's got a 6 end and a 5 end of points on it. I've used the 5 point, and the reason for that is because that gives you your guide for when you come to cut with your scissors. Now, I always stayed clear of pulled flowers when I was learning because I could never do it. We didn't have tools like this then. These came along later. You need a pair of nail scissors. These are special Sugarcraft scissors that are very expensive, but an ordinary pair of nail scissors like these, they'll do. This one's got a curved edge on it, so they're quite handy for some things as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip in where those lines are. Clip. Don't go right down to the bottom. You only want to go sort of near to it. Okay, and open it out like that. Then back to your pad. Pop that down on your pad. Now, when we were taught how to do pull flowers, what you had to do was to get it on your thumb like that and stretch it out with your thumb. And I could never get the petals all the same size, but then I saw somebody demonstrating at the Cake International, and she showed us how to do it this way with the ball point. So what you do, ball tool. So basically, lay it down with the petal you want to stretch flat on the board, in with your ball tool and pull it out like that. Roll it over to the next one, pull it out like that. Pull it out, pull it out, and last petal. Okay, so then you've got 5 petals on there. So the next thing to do is I like to give them a little bit of veining, so this is where this tool comes in handy. So lay it in the centre and just roll it from side to side. This also thins the edge of your petals as well when you're doing this. Just to use the bone of your finger to rest on and use that for your pad, and roll your petals out like that, like that, like that, right to the very edge of your petals. Okay, and then what I do is, to get a bit of shape, then I get the edge of the petals and just give them a little pinch like this. Like that. Get your wire with your stamens on it down into the centre of the flower, and you want that to come right the way down out of the bottom of the flower like that. Okay, pull that down until the green disappears into your flower. Then between your 2 forefingers, roll it between your 2 forefingers to roll it down your wire like that. And then just pull your petals up. Then you can go around, and if you need to give them a little bit of a twinge like that. Okay. And then put that way one side to dry. Right, now when I've done that, then I'm going to show you how to make the leaves. Now when you're starting out, the easiest way to do it is to do it on the cell board. So I'm going to turn that over now onto this side. Get a bit of white fat on my hands and rub it over these veins here. Now I've already got some green paste made up somewhere over here. When you're buying colours to do your flowers and your leaves, don't go to a lot of expense buying loads of different greens and things like that. Other colours, yes, but greens, there's only one green that I would ever use, and that is either Holly and Ivy from Squire's Kitchen or Xmas Green from Sugarflare, which is an extra strength paste, which is a bit more expensive, and because of one of the products that are in it to colour it. But basically they're the same colour. It's like the ivory. The ivory is the same in the Wilton as it is in the Sugarflare. So I'm going to break off a small piece of green paste. And I'm going to roll that into a sausage now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim to cut 2 leaves out. So I want that a little bit longer. Put that over 2 of the ridges. Now you might find it easier to do one at a time. If it means doing one at a time, do one at a time, because the paste dries out very quickly, so don't try to do too much. And then start rolling it out over those grooves. Now you don't want to go as thin as you are with the petals, because leaves are a bit fleshier than petals, so we can get away with them being a bit thinner. Take your paste off and turn it over, and you've got your 2 grooves there. So then you've got your leaves here. I'm just going to do 2 sizes, one of each of 2 sizes, because I've already got some leaves already made and dried, ready to colour them, so we don't take too much time watching me making boring leaves. So over your groove, with your groove up the centre, or should I say your ridge up the centre, cut the petal out. Same with that. I'm doing the bigger one and the medium one because they're bigger and you'll be able to see them easier. Now what you've got to be careful of here is, because you've got these little spikes on the leaves, that when you pull the paste away, you make sure you go the way that the spikes are going. So start from the bottom, put your finger on the bottom and pull your paste away to the top, like that. Same with the other one. Because if you pull it the other way, you'll pull your spikes down and it'll go misshapen, so that's no good. We don't want that. Just put that away for a minute. We shall be coming back to the green in a bit, because I'll show you how to make the calyx for the back of the flower. So once you've done that, then you want some 28 gauge wires, which I've already got a couple of wires cut here. And what we need to do is to get that wire as far up the petal as we can. So put it on your first finger with your thumb on top, into the bottom. Make sure your wire's straight before you put it in. That's got a little bit of a bend on the end, so we won't use that end. Twist it in, because they're covered in Stem-Tex of these, and if you don't twist it in, sometimes they can unravel and it can tear your paste. And then a little bit at a time, you can feel it going down your paste in your ridge, and make sure it doesn't show on that side. If it does, just pull it back. I'll do it wrong on the other one to show you what happens if you come out. So if you get that leaf on there on your first finger, thumb on top, twist into the bottom. Now I've come out a bit there, so pull your wire back and go back in and back up your leaf. That's gone up to about there, so that's gone all the way up and it's not showing. Next thing to do, back to your pad. We always thin the edges just to take that cut edge off. If you do competition work, which I've done in the past, they look for things like that. They're more bothered about your edges being thin than the centre of your petals and leaves, although sometimes I think some of the competition entries are a bit thick, but that's my opinion. So this time go the way that the spikes are going when you're thinning your petals. So go from the bottom to the top, bottom to top, bottom to top. Now this is where you do need a veiner for doing this, because the next bit, to make it look like a rose leaf, we have these veiners here. These are actually made from real rose leaves. So what you need to do now is get it the right way up, so the bottom of your leaf is towards the bottom of your veiner. The ridge there wants to go in the groove, because that's going to be the back of the leaf, and the raised part here, which it would look like the back of a leaf, it isn't. It's going to form the front. These are the opposite way around, so it's a mirror effect. On top, press, bring it out and shape the leaf like that. On top, just where you get the best leaf veining, sort of near to the top. This one doesn't have very good veining at the top, so I've put them slightly further down. Shape it. And then what you need to do with that then is we use this foam here, bobble foam. This is actually acoustic foam, is this. If we buy it from a Sugarcraft shop, we can get it, we pay a lot of money for it. I get it from an acoustic firm and it's cheaper. I sell these for a square for £2, whereas at shows you get a tiny bit for £2.50. That goes in between there like that, so that shapes your petals. The reason we use this foam is because with it being foam, it lets the air through, so it dries your petals from front and back both at the same time. So that's what we do with that. Right, so that's your leaves. I've already got some ready done here, and for each sprig of leaves, this is a sprig of leaves here, you want 2 small, 2 medium and 1 large. And then I'll show you how to colour them like that when we get on to the next stage. So they're already dry, ready to colour. So the next stage now is to do the calyx for the back of the rose. So if I show you, I'll turn my board back over again. I'm going back onto the flat side, so we don't need the ridges anymore. A little bit of fat. And the calyx is the back part of the rose, this part here. So that's the part that's the outer part of the flower before it opens, and then it curves back. On an actual rose they do actually curl back, but if we do that in sugar they break off too easily when we try and put them into sprays, so we don't do that. I'm just going to pop that over there. Right, so onto your board, roll your paste out. Again, you don't want to go as thin as we do with the petals because the calyx part of it is more fleshy like the leaves are, so we don't go quite as thin. It doesn't want to be too thick. You can tell your paste is too thick if when you thin round the edge you end up with a big deep groove round the edge of your paste, and that's because you haven't rolled it thin enough. So, but we don't want these to be frilly like a petal anyway, so we're not going to put as much pressure on. We just want to clean the edges off. So for that we're going to use a calyx cutter, which is, what have I done with it? Lost my calyx cutter. There it is. Now these do come in plastic or metal. I don't mind people using the plastic ones because they're less expensive, but some people do prefer the metal ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the calyx on a full rose, half rose, and a bud. I've done that one, yeah. So I'm going to cut out 3 of these calyx. Now you can go to the trouble of cutting little nicks into your calyx if you want to be botanically correct. Some people like to do it, some people don't. But if you look at a rose, probably 2 or 3 of the points on here have little nicks in them. But it depends on how pedantic you want to be. You know, I mean, if I was doing a life-size rose, then I would go to that trouble. I've actually got some special calyx cutters that do that for me. And when I've done competition work, I've gone to that trouble as well. But that's for competition work. You're aiming for a prize, and they're very picky about every little detail. So you have to be careful there. So again, onto your pad. Where's my ball tool gone? What have we done with it? Oh, there it is. I keep losing things because I move them out of the way. Should make a note to myself, shouldn't I? Right. So this time I'm going to go from the centre outwards, because it may stretch your calyx slightly, but that's okay. I quite like the calyx to be quite long. On some people do them a lot shorter than me, but that's down to personal preference. If you did want to be botanically correct when you're doing the calyx in a spray of flowers, when I was taught how to do them, Maureen told me to, if you're going to put the calyx on, you want to curl them back, don't put your calyx on until just before you start assembling your flowers, and then they're still quite soft when you put them in, so you can adjust them then, and they're less likely to break off because they're soft. So if they move about, you can readjust them. Right, so once you've done that, turn it over again, like that. And what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to get the ball tool in the centre of each of the calyx and pull down like that and cup it in. This starts them going the way that I want them to go. And in some cases makes them fit a bit better to your flower if you do this. You don't have to do it, but it does help. And if you wanted to be really picky, you could also ball tool in the centre there, because that's going to go around the bottom of your flower. Now the thing to remember, if people notice, they always say to me, well, that bottom piece is all showing, it looks untidy. That's going to be covered by your calyx when you put that on, so don't worry about that, that's fine. Try not to get glue on your pad if you can avoid it, because otherwise when you're thinning edges or something, I mean, it will dry, it'll be alright when it's dried off there, but if you do get any on, be careful if you've got some more to cut out. Right, I'm going to start with the bud first of all, so we'll come back to a bud, into the centre of your calyx like that, pull that up, turn it upside down, your sepals will drop down where they want to go, and then just ease them down into place. Sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't, it just depends. I don't want to go too flush up against the side, because I want them to stand off a little bit, because it is opening up, but that's covered all the bottom part there. We'll come back to that in a bit, because we have another stage to do on that. So we'll come on to the half rows. Just try and make sure that your sepals fall where you're going to cover up that base bit, but if you've made your centres small enough, this should cover it all up. Okay, and then onto the full rows. Now on the full rows, because you've got 5 petals and you've got 5 sepals, try and get your sepals to fall over the joint of your petals. So if you pull it up and you see there you've got your edge of your petal, bring your first sepal up over that and then take them round like that over the joins like that. Okay, adjust that into position. Right, the next stage now is we want to make the hip, which is the back part of the flower, which if you've got a seed pod on it, you notice with a lot of flowers you get seeds afterwards, and it's the same with roses as well. You get this little piece at the back which is where the seeds are, and if you look at a real flower you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to get some small balls of paste, roll them into a ball. You don't want to be any bigger than a Marifat pea for this size of rose. And if you want to get them all identical, like you say, you can always measure them on the yeah, about number 4 on that. Just check that, that's about the same size. So we want another one the same size as that. I mean, for an inexpensive tool it's very handy, and the one thing about this tool is, as far as I'm aware, it's one of the tools that nobody's copied. That one's slightly That's slightly smaller, is that? So I'm just going to add a little bit more paste into that one. Most of the other tools, I mean, Chinese have copied everything, and a lot of the manufacturers have had rings around trying to stop them from doing it, but I think they've all given up now because they don't seem to get anywhere with it. There we are. They're all the same size. So now what we need to do now is turn your flour upside down. Put some glue at the base of your wire, like that. Ball of paste on the bottom of your wire. Pull it down so it's underneath the calyx and just shape that round, like that. Okay. Doesn't matter which way round you put your glue on, whether you put it on before you put your base on the wire, whichever is easier for you. So make sure they're well in place as well, because some of the ones that I did before, the calyx, the hips had dropped off the back because I hadn't glued them on properly, so I had to mix up some glue with some flour paste in order to get them to stick. But we get there in the end. Right. I've got some glue on one of the calyx there, so I'm just going to get a bit of kitchen roll and just try and get that off, because when I come to dust it, if I don't, the dust won't take there. Get that off. That's it, it's better. Put those to one side to dry. Right, next stage is the exciting part. This is where we start colouring things, ready to put them together. Kitchen roll. It's a good idea if you get your board out of the way when you come to this point, for the simple reason that if you don't, you end up with a lot of colour on there, and you don't need your board for this. So I've got a piece of kitchen roll here. So what I'm going to do is, now you only use tiny amounts of colour for whatever you're doing. Now I'm going to use a few different colours here. I'm going to use rich burgundy. Where's the other one? Where's my blackcurrant? There it is. Blackcurrant, which I'm going to use on the roses, and I'm using ginkgo green for these. These are all edible art powder colours. These are just about the cheapest colour on the market and one of the biggest ranges of colours. So now then, leaves first of all, and this is where I find a lot of students fall down on making the leaves, because they get a bit carried away with this little bit on the end that I'm going to show you now. Right, for each set you want one large, two medium and two small. Now I have a range of brushes. I know a lot of students don't have different brushes for different jobs, but you can do that later on. You can always add to your range. This one's the oldest brush that I've got. This is 30 odd years old, is this brush, and I'm still using it. And I only use this for greens. Right, so the first colour I'm going to do is, I'm going to do some rich burgundy on the edge of the leaves. So if you look at some that I've already coloured there, you can see I've got that sort of reddish tinge right on the edge of the leaves. It's probably a bit more than the actual flowers are, but sometimes when we're doing things in sugar, we sometimes have to over exaggerate things a bit to make them look realistic, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is tiny bit of colour on the brush. Now it's on your brush, off your brush, then go to the edge and you brush from the outside in, like that. Some people go like that. Don't do that. We don't want lines around it. You just want to blur it in. I'm sure a lot of you wear eyeshadow, so the technique is the same. Blending. So blend, blend. I don't wear eyeshadow, so I wouldn't know about things like that. Just my little joke, just in case you're thinking, how does he know about that? Because I saw my ex-wife putting it on, that's why. So just go around all of your leaves like that. I'm only going to do one set because you don't want to be sat watching me do loads and loads of leaves. I've already done all my leaves and put them together, so I'm just going to do one set so that I can put one set together. Now when I've taught in class, we only do a spray with 3 roses, 1 half, 1 medium and 1 full rose. And generally we do 3 sets of leaves or 4 sets of leaves, whichever you feel confident doing. The reason being because it's going to take a long time to do. I mean, it takes it over 5 weeks lessons to do that, to get everything made and dried, because you're going to work at a lower slower pace than I do. Right, green. I've just spilt a bit of red on there, but that'll get blended in with it when I put that on. So green on your pad, off your brush, and then just brush all over your leaf with the green, and then turn it over without putting any more colour on the back, and just give it a waft over the back, because the backs of leaves tend to be lighter than the fronts. All over the red as well. Don't worry about that being underneath, that doesn't matter. You'll find out when we come to the final stage why we do that. When I first learned how to do this, we put all sorts of different colours on, coat of this and that and the other. I just find this, the way that I do it, is the simplest way, and you get the same effect. I try and find the easiest way for people that are learning to do these things, because if you start overcomplicating things, then it puts people off. And the last thing I want to do is to put somebody off if they've taken the trouble to sign up for one of my classes. I want them to feel confident at what they do. You may not do it perfectly the first time. That doesn't matter. It's all part of the learning process. And I would never turn around and tell anybody that they've made a bad job of anything. I'd always say, that's a good start. This is how you need to do it. People tend to be more self-critical of their own stuff than they do other people, you know. So, and I mean, I'm just as guilty of that as anybody else. Right, now then, the next stage now is to glaze the leaves. So I'm using leaf glaze here, and the thing is, when you're using leaf glaze, you've got to have some glaze cleaner, which is this here, isopropyl. We use this for painting on cakes as well as that's got colour all over it. Something's leaked on it there. We use that for cleaning the brushes as well as painting on cakes. But what I do is I put a small amount of it into another little bottle like that, and I keep that just for cleaning my brushes in. Don't throw it away when you've cleaned your brush. Keep it. You use it over and over and over again, even if it looks a bit mucky, because all you're doing is taking the glaze out anyway. I don't use a decent brush either for doing glaze on things. I just have a cheap brush. Get a set of these from a pound shop or something like that. They're ideal for this job. For things that I'm doing on the cakes, like dusting brushes and painting brushes, I use sable brushes for painting, the fine ones. I don't know, I've got one here somewhere. But from me, they're quite cheap. You pay probably more than twice as much in a shop for them, but that's the shops for you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to glaze all over the leaf with this now. And you can see that the red comes through from the back to the front. It's quite remarkable when you do this, you know. It's fascinating watching nature come back to life When I was taught how to make sugar flowers in the early days, Maureen always said to us that you'll never look at a flower or a leaf in the same way ever again. You'll be dissecting it to see how you can take it apart and put it back together again. And when you see some of the incredible things that they do in the competition areas at Cake International at Birmingham, you will be fascinated with the flowers. They look so real. They look as though you've just been out and picked them out of the garden. The amount of work that goes into them is unbelievable. Not quite as simplified as these that I'm doing here. Right, so once you've done those, that dries very quickly, does that. So we don't have to wait too long. By the time I finish colouring the roses, that will be ready to put together. I've lost my lid. There. The only trouble is with these bottles, with using the glaze in there, it does tend to stick your lid on a bit because it dries in the thing. So we'll just clean that brush before I get any further, because I don't need to do any more glazing. So just into your glaze cleaner, give it a good waft about. Another thing you should never do is these dusting brushes, never wash them. They don't want washing, but if they do get that dirty that you have to clean them, we can clean them with some corn flour on a worktop and just work your brush in to bring the colour out if you've got to reuse it for different colours. But if they do get really dirty and you do want to wash them, use the glaze cleaner to clean them in. It's amazing how it works. It's incredible at bringing the muck out of your brushes. Right, so I'm going to come back to this colour now. I've also got another colour here as well, shell gold, which is what I've used on the filler flowers, and somewhere I should have a brush for that. I'm going to find what I've done with it. No, it's not there. I'll get on with colouring these first and then I'll sort that one out. Right, so what I'm going to do now is, I've got a full rose here that I dried earlier, that's already dry, and I'm going to show you how to colour that. So for that I'm going to use this colour, Blackcurrant. It looks really dark, but when you get it on something like this, because we're only going to use very small amounts, you'd be surprised how delicate it can be. So a little bit of that onto and get it off your brush. One of the things that I've been pulled up at competitions for is because they can see specks of dust, and that's because you haven't got enough dust off your brush. You don't want it to flick on. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around the very edge of the petals like that and just catch them. All I'm doing is what I call scratch dusting. I'm just catching the edge and it sort of pulls it in a little bit. You only want it on the very edge of your petals. So if you look at a rose like this, it's got colour on the edge. That's all there is on it. That's the only bit of colour. But it makes all the difference. Now if you wanted to with these, you could actually dust these all over with the cream luster dust first, which would make the petals more shiny and waxy looking. I do use it on some flowers sometimes. There we are. That's all you need. So the same on that bud, because I'm a bud short in the other buds, so I'm just going to give that a little bit of a colour on the edge like that. When you get to the centre of the flower a bit, go a little bit more heavily in because they're a little bit darker, so you can go a little heavier on the centre part. Again, like I said, because your petals are close together, then you will get that. Right, so onto the filler flowers. So what I'm going to do with that now is, what's that? I used the wrong brush there. If you get a brush that's dirty and you want to use it for something else, I'll show you how to clean it. So here, I've got some icing sugar over here, that'll do. Just put a bit on your worktop like that. Normally I'd use corn flour, but it just happens that I've just got the icing sugar here, and I want to clean that red out of there. So just go into your dust like that and just work your brush in it. And then on your hand, get rid of the dust, and that's taking most of the colour out. Look, that shouldn't pick any more of that up now. So just get rid of that one because we're finished with that one. Oops. Whatever you do, don't spill this dust because it stains like hell. If you get it on your carpet or anything like that, you'll have a right job getting rid of it. Now this one's called Shell Gold, which is like a cream with gold flecks in it. So onto there like that, and then all I did was just dust into the petals like that. You can go right into the centre and dust out on these if you want. So that's that. You can't really see much of it, but later on you can steam your flowers. I have a special steamer here for doing that. This is a PME steamer. You can use a kettle or an iron, but make sure it's not spitting. That's the main thing. I had an accident with this yesterday. I put too much water in it and it spat on some of my leaves, so some of them I had to redo because they started melting, because if you get water on, they'll just disintegrate. Right, those leaves are dry now. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put those together, and I have some, when I find it, I've got some tape somewhere that I've already cut. I find what I've done with it. There it is. This is a darker colour because the roses have got darker stems on it, so I've used this, and I'll also use this for putting the spray together as well. I've just used lighter colour on the filler flowers because they usually have lighter coloured stems anyway, with being smaller flowers. Not always, but a lot of them do. So again, pinch it in to make sure it's stuck to your wire, and then start twisting between your finger and thumb. Hold it at an angle like that and twist down. Now I haven't gone right up to the leaf for the simple reason that I don't want to break the leaf off, so then push it up like that. Go down about an inch and then put your two medium leaves in. Now unlike most leaves, on rose leaves, the largest one is at the end and the smallest one's at the bottom, instead of being small going back to large ones. So twist down with that, go down an inch. Now there's a bit of stem showing there, don't want that showing, so pull those down so those are in. It also stops them from rocking about, so they stay put as well. About an inch down, then your two small leaves go in. Again, you're always leaving a little bit of wire so your fingers don't catch your leaves and break them. Tape down a bit and then pull your wires down like that, right down to the tape, and then tape right the way down to the bottom. You get used to doing this when you've done it a long time like me. Right, so then you've got your leaves like that, so then you bring your leaves out. So small leaf out to the side, out to the side. Medium leaf out to the side, out to the side. Like that. Okay? Right, put those to one side with all my other leaves ready for my spray. Now coming back to the filler flower, the backs, these you don't put a calyx on these because they're too small to put a calyx on. So what I do is I have a very pale green powder here. This one's called Tropical Lime. There are a few different limes. They do a lime and a tropical lime. The lime is just slightly darker than the tropical lime. Again, back to my green brush. A little bit of the lime green, and then I just dust just around the base of the petals. I also use this a lot when I'm doing things like lilies, where you've got that little bit of green just on the edge of the petals, just to catch the edge of the petals, which looks very good. And sometimes up the back of the petals as well, there's a sort of green line. Look at the back of your flowers and you'll see what I mean. Right, so that's done. So put that to one side, and I think we've got all the components all put together there. So I'm just going to get rid of these things out of the way, and then I can start assembling the flowers. What I am going to do with them, which I've never done in class because I don't have anything there to do it, apart from the fact it will be too big, I'm actually going to do, I've done a wedding cake that I've been working on here, and I'm going to put the flowers on the cake so you can see how they look on a cake as well. So I've got that at the side here. You can't see it yet, but you will see it. Right, so get all my components together. I'll just put my light round so you can see what I'm doing. Put a bit more light on the subject. Push all my tools back and get all my bits and pieces ready. So here's my Blue Peter bit that I've done. All the flowers ready for this spray. Yes, there are a lot of flowers in this spray, and for that reason I've done half of the spray so you can see what it's like. And normally in class we've done sort of a pointed spray like this with just a bud, a half rose and a full rose, but for this, as I've told people, all the sprays all start the same way, unless you're doing what we call a bomb spray, where you've got sort of a rounded spray which is done in a mound. But all the other sprays are either what we call a pointed spray, a double pointed spray, which is this one with another one at that side and then some flowers in the centre, and then that can be turned into either a crescent spray or a Hogarth spray, which is what I'm going to do today. So I'll just put those to one side for the time being over there while I put that together. So I'm going to start and show you how I put that together. So I need some tape, which I've got here. I'm going to use full width tape for this because we want everything to be short, secure, and we don't want anything rocking about. So I'll just pop that back in there. So I'm going to start off with a bud. Oh, one thing that I missed doing as well was dusting the back of this this rose here. I better do that, haven't I? Well, I've still got some. No, I haven't. I didn't dust the back of that. Whoops! My first mistake today. Where's my brush? Down there somewhere, behind me. Oh, knocked my glue over. Never mind. Oh, it's there. So to do your calyx, just brush down the calyx like that. By gum, it's getting warm in here. Must be getting warmer outside. Still looks miserable though. Imagine what it's like for me, shielding with this blooming NHS letter coming, not being able to go out. Can't go out for exercise, I've put weight on. And have you seen the state of my hair? I'm probably sure you noticed earlier on, I look like one of the Beatles. Right, that's not quite as dark as it should be, but it's dark enough. Right, I've already steamed the ones that I've got in there, so I'm just going to steam these just to show you what effect that has. Let's get it a little bit more. Just dust that one. Right, when you've got your colour, you can steam them just to set the colour. So what I'm going to do is, there we are, it's steaming. So all you need to do is to go around like that and like that. That's all you need. Put it to one side to dry. There's the flour that I dusted. Don't want to do too much on that because it's still quite soft and I don't want the petals to drop back. But you've got that sort of like a sheen on it now. Switch that off. Put that over that side. Over there. Right. Just give that a bit more. Where's my green brush gone? There. Right, tape. I thought I cut some. Must have done. I'm just losing my head here. Right, start again. It's been a long demonstration, so excuse me. Right, again, as normal, stretch the end of your tape. You start off your spray with a sprig of leaves. Start your tape on it, and then lay a bud in between your leaves like that. You always want your leaves to be behind your flowers. They're not the main focal point, they're just there to add a framework. So tape back about 1 inch, and then you can put in a half rose. Now I've got various different stages of roses here. I've got one that I've left with the first 3 sets of petals on. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of wire on it like that and tape this in. Now what I do to make sure everything is secure in the spray, I find it easier when I've put a flower in, to make sure it stays where I want it to stay, to tape right down to the bottom. So you're going to tape right the way down in between each thing you do, and you'll find then you can move it around it and it'll stay where you want it to be. That wants to be slightly off to one side of the one in front. Then if you start your tape off again below that, about 1 inch again, I'm going to put in the next half rose, which is the next size up with the further 3 petals on it. I'm not going to bend it up this time because I've got a bit of room there to get that in. And tape down with that. Keep your tape really tight, so you're stretching with this hand and rolling with the other hand. So you need it to get nearly taut enough for you to tear it. And then we can bend that flower up there, so that goes to the other side. So you've got one in the middle, one to that side, one to that side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in again and I'm going to then put in between one of the little filler flowers then. So leaving a bit of stem bare there, put that in. And then pull that one up there like that, so it's in between the roses. Okay, tape right the way down to the bottom. So these wires will stay put where I've put them if you get it tight enough. You won't have all the... People always say, oh, my flowers are all waggling about. It's because you haven't got your tape tight enough, that's why. Right, so if we go back to the spray and have a look at that, see where we've got to. So behind that I've put another bud in. Should have another bud in there somewhere. Can't see it. Have I got one? No, I haven't. Thought I had. Oh well. Start the tape off again behind there. And I'm going to put in another half rose in there. Oops, just rest that on there for now and tape right down to the bottom. Then I can adjust that one. And then I'm going to put in another filler flower. Oh, I've got another bud, it's there, look. There we are. I'm just going to put that in there next to that. I'm trying to make it identical to the other side because I want two sides to this spray. So it's going to be a point on one end and a point on the other end. Which, as I explained, is how you make a Hogarth spray. Or a Crescent spray. Just pull that up, like that. There we are. Just gives us a little bit more variety in the spray. Right, the next thing I'm going to do, the last part for this end of the spray then, is to put some more leaves in. I put these in at the back at last because they're going to go behind these flowers and that will frame that. Because if you notice in there, there's only 3 sprays of flowers in there, leaves in there, with all the flowers. You don't need loads and loads of leaves, they're just a framework. But you can use any kind of leaves that you want. So I start off by putting that behind the spray like that. Just one twist round with that, and then put another set of leaves in at the other side at the same position so they're both level with each other, and go around with your tape, then spray down to the bottom. The only problem you have now, and this is where you have to be careful, when you're putting this many flowers in a spray, it does start to get quite heavy because sugar is very heavy. Right, so then we pull these leaves out to the side, one there, one there, so we've got that kind of spray. Okay, the next bit is the tricky bit. I've got another piece of tape there that will do for this. I'm now going to put these two sprays together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend that wire down like that. Now it's a good idea to get a pair of long nose pliers to do this. So if you hold the spray just behind the roses there and bend your wire down like that. So you're bending it at an angle like that. Okay, that's one spray. And then get your other spray and do the same. So put your pliers on there and bend down like that. Okay, so you've now got that bend down like that. Right, now then, what you need to do now is to get your tape started off on one side of your spray. So this is where you need to be careful that you don't knock anything off. Now those leaves are hanging down a bit, so I'm just going to push them up a bit out of the way. You can readjust them later. So I'm going to, that's torn off. That's torn it, as I say. Spin that round like that. Make sure that's secure. Then get your other spray and put them both together like that. You might find to get it started you need to tuck it round like that, just so you can get to that point where you can twist it round. It is going to move around a bit at this point, so don't worry so much about that. I'm just going to wrap it round manually for the time being, just until I can get far enough down so that I can spin it round without knocking any leaves or anything off. If you need to bend your sprays up a little bit, bend them up out of the way so you don't catch them. Sorry about that, my battery ran out, so I've had to do this in 2 halves. So I'm back again and I've got the 2 sprays together. I'm just going to add a bit more tape for extra security, but this will go together better once I start adding some more flowers into it, which is where we're going to add all the full roses in to fill out the middle part of the spray. Right, I'll just get some more tape and then I can carry on with the rest of it, and hope I don't run out again. Get that straightened up. Right, so what I'm going to do now is we start off with the centre part of the spray by adding in the full roses and the filler flowers. I'm going to start off by adding the roses in first, and my tape's not sticking, so I've got it on the wrong side. It's always a good idea to, when you stretch your tape, to press it against your finger and find out which side is the stickier, because there is one side that's usually stickier than the other. Right, just turn that up a little bit more so you can see what I'm doing. So now I'm going to start adding in the full roses. Oops. Try not to knock any petals off while I'm getting these out. Now that one looks like the fullest one, so I'm going to put that in the centre. Let's just tilt that up a bit. Sorry about that, folks. I'll just tighten that up. Sorry about this, folks, but it's going again. Must be another screw somewhere that I'm missing. Again. Another flower in there. And another flower in there. Oh, sorry about this, folks. Right, I'm going to finish this spray off now because I think I've got enough in. I've just got some leaves to put in, so I'm just going to tape down to the bottom. Start the tape off again up at the top where we started before. So I'm just going to put some flowers in now. Oh God. Right, I'm back. Sorry about losing you earlier on, but my battery ran flat, so I had to recharge it. So I'm back again to finish off the spray. So I'm just going to turn it down so you can see what I'm doing. Right, so we've got so far with the spray. I'm just going to add some leaves into it now. I've already put some filler flowers in while you were away. So when you put the leaves in, you just turn your wires back like that, and then put your leaves in underneath your flowers, then tape in, just put another one in there on that side, and tape round. Sometimes I put more in, it just depends on how many leaves you want in the spray, but there we are, we've got one spray in there and one spray in there. It's not all showing, it's just basically there, just as I've said before, to give you a framework to work with. I'm just going to tape right the way down to the bottom. And I'm going to cut some off the bottom of that, just to make that a little bit shorter. There we are. That's as much as I need. Now once we get to this stage here, now you can either leave it as a pointed spray as it is. Oh God, I'm not. You can see the top of the cake there. Now this is a dummy, but if you were doing a real cake, then you would put a posy pick into the cake for you to put your flowers into, and that's like it's like a little plastic vase that we put into the cake. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop this spray of flowers into the hole that I've made there. I'll just get my tweezers and push it down into the cake like that. And